Well, hello! Today we're learning how to freehand these fun and easy feathers. Linda McCuean is here to demonstrate stippling techniques and show us her beautiful quilts. And then I'll give you an idea of some of the special services that professional quilters can offer. So stay tuned.
Linda's Longarm Quilting is made possible by Gamble Quilting Machine Company, bringing quality, innovation, and service to quilters around the world for over a quarter of a century. By YLI, making decorative threads that help you unleash your imagination. By Statler Stitcher, providing automation to enhance and expand your long-arm quilting business. And by Hobbs Bonded Fibers.
We're going to freehand feathers together, and I'll tell you about some services that quilters can offer, services that you may not have thought of. But first, we've got a guest. Linda McCuean stopped by and brought some beautiful quilts. We're going to look at those and talk about her long-arm quilting experience. Welcome, Linda.
I'm glad to be here.
What got you started in long-arm quilting?
Well, I went to a guild meeting and a friend had some beautiful quilts there that were machine quilted, and I was intrigued.
Linda, how long have you been long-arm quilting?
I've only been long-arm quilting for 5 years.
5 years, and look at this. You're published in calendars and books. Unbelievable in 5 years. Tell me where you have your machine.
I work in a shop. We have 3 long-arm machines there and 3 quilters.
So you're quilting a lot of quilts for customers.
Well, I only work part-time, so I only do about 4 to 6 customer quilts a month.
So you can do your own quilts in between.
Yes.
To do these competition quilts.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Well, let's take a look at some of these beautiful quilts that you've brought to show
Okay.
us. What's the name of this first one?
This is my feathered star quilt, and it was my first competition piece that I did on the long-arm machine.
I remember when you won your award, what a stir you made. This won Viewer's Choice too, I believe.
Yes, it did.
That's fantastic. And all this trapunto work, it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
And the next one is called?
This is Starry Night.
Ooh.
This is my rendition of the Van Gogh painting, and it's done all with thread painting. There's very little applique work or anything else. It's just thread.
It's just fantastic. This is a little different style than you did on your feathered star.
Yes, this was an adventure.
More of an art quilt.
Yes.
And what's this one that we have right behind us here?
The name of this quilt is Jubilee, and I also made it for competition.
I can see the design work in the quilting just complements the applique so well. So Linda, how do you go about designing the quilting patterns for this?
Well, I started by designing my quilt top with a sample block, and I used my digital camera and my computer to create an image of what the center of the quilt would look like.
High-tech stuff, yes.
Yes, and fun. Then I used some paper and drew some options for the border to design how the finished quilt would look. After the quilt top was finished, I went to some old copyright-free design books to choose some patterns to work from. I copied this old embroidery design and took the motifs from it and enlarged them to the size I needed.
I love this folk art look.
And rearranged them to create these motifs in the quilting.
And they are just gorgeous. They do go with the applique. They're fantastic.
Thank you.
That's given me a good understanding of how you come up with your beautiful quilting designs, Linda. Now let's take a look at your most recent work. Linda, what's the name of this quilt?
It's called Remembrance.
It is absolutely breathtaking. And I noticed that in the trapunto, there's just a little darker shade. How did you get that?
I used a layer of colored polar fleece to shade the trapunto.
In the actual trapunto.
Yes.
That is fantastic. And I also love the stippling effect that you have in here. It's different than the most of the stippling that we see. Can you show us how to do that on the machine?
Yes, that would be fun.
So you're going to show us that wonderful stippling technique.
Yes, it looks like bubbles, but it's really just loops. Loops bumped against loops.
Wouldn't I would think that even a beginner can do loops.
Loops are an easy technique to do. And when you're bumping one against another, the design just flows. You can travel around one loop to get to the next one.
So it's okay to stitch over where you already have been?
Yes, it just adds to the texture.
It looks like little pebbles.
If you're doing it in this size, maybe on a landscape or a house, it does look like pebbles. If you want to use it for a background fill, I'll move over here and show you what it looks like when you do them tiny.
Would you have to slow your machine down to do as tiny as you did on that wonderful quilt?
Yes, I moved a little slower on that, and I used a finer thread so that it wouldn't cause a lot of thread buildup on the surface of the quilt.
Oh, that's a good tip, using a finer thread if you're going to do it really tiny.
The thread on my remembrance quilt is silk thread, which is very fine and slick.
Ooh.
Another option for using this technique is to vary the size of the bubbles you're making. If you make some small ones and some tiny ones next door, it creates even more texture.
So it becomes more of a meandering pattern.
Yes.
And I imagine that this would really raise up a design, as it did on your quilt, really enhance the quilting trapunto.
Like any other background fill, the smaller you make it, the more distinct your quilted motifs will appear. If you want it just to create texture, you would use a blending color of thread. I'm using a dark thread here so that the viewers can see the stitching.
Well, that looks like I could do it, Linda. That's terrific. Boy, thanks for sharing that wonderful technique with us, Linda. That technique is good for beginners to try. If you use a finer thread, you can do it very tiny. It creates extra texture in your quilt and also raises the motif. Thank you for sharing your beautiful award-winning quilts with us and your techniques with us today.
You're so welcome.
There are a lot of different services and specializations a professional quilter can offer. Let's talk about a few. Obviously, a quilter can quilt for people making quilt tops. There's plenty of work in this area, as a visit to your local quilt shop will show you. More people are making quilts, so the demand for professional quilters to complete them will only increase. But this is just the start of what a quilting business can offer. There's decorator work. Personally, this is where I started because I was doing window coverings, and every time I did someone's bedroom, they wanted a comforter to match. So I did plenty of comforters and bedspreads and duvet covers when I started. It's big business. T-shirt quilts. This is another area that is virtually untouched but becoming more and more popular. Everyone has T-shirts they want to save because they're memories, but they don't want to wear them anymore. Putting them in a quilt and putting them in their bed makes it a wonderful memory to sleep under. Just have one on display and watch that business take off. Photo quilts. It's only been in the last few years that we've been able to put photographs on fabric, and now we can put them into quilts. Imagine the delight of your little grandchild when you have Grandma's picture on her quilt. And what about wedding quilts and anniversary quilts? This is an area where you can specialize in exclusively. Baby nurseries. Lots of people need baby bumpers that are quilted, baby valances, quilted bears, and of course those wonderful quilts. You could specialize just in this area. And antique quilts. Many of my students have decided that they want to be pretty exclusive with antique quilts, and they even get into all the restoration of them, buying old fabrics and restoring old quilts. And upholstery shops. Don't forget all that decorating that has to be done in our homes with our couches and our benches and our chairs. Whether you're a piecer looking for new quilting projects or a professional quilter looking to expand your offerings, this list makes a good starting place. Hi, today we're working on a very special quilt. This is a quilt that my sister pieced for me. She does a lot of piecing for me because I do the quilting for her. This is called a Weaver Fever. Maybe some of you have pieced this one. It is, when you look at it from a distance, you can see the individual colors very distinctly. When you get right up on it, they kind of blend together. So you have to kind of see what you're doing. This is also a good one to do a pantograph over because it is such a busy quilt. But I didn't want to do that on this one because she made this for me. So I wanted this one to be very outstanding and do custom work in each of these pieces. So I want these, it's almost like a lattice work, and I wanted each one to stand out and do a different design in each of those areas. So the first thing I did, because I didn't really want to stitch in the ditch around each of these little blocks, I decided to do a serpentine line, and I'm just going to draw it. I'm going to do it with the machine too, but instead of stitching in the ditch with a straight line, a serpentine line is like a little wavy line like this. So it goes over the seam and back over into the other seam. It's very easy to do, and it looks terrific. So that's what I'm doing around in between the areas. And I've got some of this completed, so I'm going to start over here where I don't have it completed. Right here. Bring up my thread, take some security stitches there, and I take those in the direction that I'm going to head. I don't go back on top of those same stitches because I don't want a lot of little stitches on the back in one area. And you can't go in the same hole or you make a knot. So in your mind, if you think of 20 stitches to the inch, that's how tiny those stitches are. And that will secure that thread so that it won't come out when the thread is used or washed or laundered. So in between the coral color here and the blue color here, I have these seams, and I'm going to do that little serpentine line. Just back and forth over the seams, then I change direction, vertically, horizontally, vertically, horizontally, like this. This is a good way to stabilize this quilt, as sometimes you're deciding what to do on it. Oftentimes when I start on a quilt, I don't have a clue how I'm really going to finish quilting that quilt. And then I'm back over here to this point. So I just do the stabilizing. Now stabilizing is when you go around the blocks or you stitch in the ditch around the borders and get the quilt stabilized, and then as you're working on it, that quilt talks to you, tells you what it needs, or you get an idea. And I've learned that the very first idea that comes into my head is probably what's going to look best. Oftentimes we second guess our ideas or our thoughts, or we think, oh no, that's not going to look good. So, you know, you just need to trust yourself that what your eyes see there is what probably is going to look the best. Now I've got a little area here. I'm going to start. I had to stop there because I was at the point where I had already stitched that. I'm going to do this little white area, and then in the white areas, as I looked at the quilt from a distance, I knew I wanted to do something really outstanding in this white area because it's going to show so much. White or light colors really show off the quilting. So I wanted it to be different than the rest of the quilt and something that would really show up. So I chose to do something very simple, and it's just simply these little curves, half circle, half circle, half circle, half circle, And then I swing all the way around. Now I swing all the way over to this side, but I left a little opening here because I'm going to find my way out there. I'm coming around into a pinwheel, and then I'm coming back out. Now this time I'll swing clear over to this side, so you kind of have to pre-plan that, otherwise you wouldn't leave yourself enough room. And half circle, half circle, half circle, like that, and I can end right in that seam. Now if I want to do this continuous, I can actually follow this seam down here, and then I could continue to do my serpentine line. Did you see how you want to, as much as you can, do a continuous line? You don't want to have to stop and start too much. Not only does it waste a lot of time, but then you have all the thread to deal with and all the tacks and everything and the security stitches. Okay, so I found my way over here, and we've completed one of those white areas. Now I'm ready to complete a feather in here. I thought I'll do a feather with that will show up beautifully in this area, so I'm going to start in the middle of this and do a feather. Before I actually stitch this feather, I want to show you something that I do so that the first feather looks just like the last feather, so I know what I'm doing. This is an invaluable tool to a long arm quilter, and probably any quilter that likes to do freehand. And that's an artist pad. They're inexpensive, and you can just use them to your heart's delight. I'm going to do this feather in here, you see, with just a double, almost like an elongated figure 8, and then I'm going to reach out into that weaver fever, and I'm going to come back making long feathers like this. Because I want this area, this relief area, you see what I'm putting in is the positive, and the negative spaces are going to stand out, and that's what I want the quilting to show. Now in the other area, in the blue area, I want a contrast to this. I don't want this to be the same all over the quilt. So in that area, I'm actually coming in with a little curl like this, and I'll do a little, these are just like half circles, and then we get elongated into teardrops. And then as I reach out, I'm going to do just a fern design like this to cuddle that cute little curl. So that's what I'm going to be doing in the blue area. On the bottom of that, I'm going to put a little teardrop. So that's quite a contrast, you see, between the two areas, and you can see how wonderful that's going to look. So use an artist pad and draw, draw, draw. You can't draw too much. So here we go with the machine. Here's my double figure 8 right here. Then I reach out, nice loop there, reach out into each one of these points. I'm using the piecework. Each of the little pieced points, I reach out with the feathers. And I'm going to go right back up there again, and you'll see it a little bit better here in this lighter area, how I reach out into each of the points with those feathers. How easy is that? Is that fun? And you can see I am not gripping this machine. I don't have a death grip on it. It's light. This doesn't have to be hard on your body either. Just back and forth. It's almost a rhythm when you're doing feathers. It's just it's a dance with the machine. In fact, one of the best things you can do is put on some wonderful music while you are quilting. And then you can really get into the rhythm, something very soothing. Okay, we're finished with that coral area, and we're ready to move into the blue area. Now, if I were doing a quilt, I would finish all of those coral areas after I'd stabilized the quilt first, because you want to be as consistent as possible as you're doing them. And sometimes when you go from one design to the next, you forget. So to be really precise, you'd want to do all of those. We're going to go to the blue area. I'll start right here in the middle, and I'm going to secure my stitches there. I'm going to come into a little curve and start my little curl here. Remember, these are just like teardrop shapes, just kind of feathering these as I come along like that. That's real pretty. You can see that in that light area too, so that makes a very pretty design. There's my teardrop, and as I come up, I'm just going to be curving down toward the center again. So I use those points. This time I'm getting about 2 points in each one of those piecing points. So I'm getting 2 points of the fern in each of the piecing points. And then I head back up, and you'll see it even better in this lighter area. And you can see I come out point and back point, out point and back point. So you want to have a lot of these designs in your head or on paper that you can refer to. Out here like this and back. So when you get onto a quilt, you can just look at your cheat sheet, so to speak. And back and then out again. So we have a very ferny look in the blue area, and that texture is going to be terrific. It's going to be quite a contrast to those soft feathers that we have in the coral area. And that's what you want on your quilts. You want contrast, because that makes people, I say, if you make them look, make them stare. That's what you want to do. The longer they look to see what you've done, the better job you've done. So we cut our threads there. Now in this little area, this tiny little border, I'm going to, and I'm coming back, I ended there so I could continue and show you this. I'm coming back about 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm taking little tiny stitches on top of those same stitches where I ended, because I didn't have security stitches there. And I'm just going to do a little curve. You can see this. This is a great filler. And I'll just go around the corner and then I'll stop, because I want to show you that feather in the border. This is so easy, and it's easy to place this right in the corner. You see that? And then just continue right down the side with this little design. And I'll end there. And I'm going to come up here. Now you can see where I've already stitched partially in the border there with that feather. And I've kind of left it open so I can come back, and I'll show you how I go around that corner. I just swing around the corner like that, and a very gentle curve. I'll just come that far right now. And then I do my feathers on the way back. Now it's circle, follow the stem, circle, follow the stem. And on this feather I decided to put a little curl in there. So there's my little curl, circle, follow the stem, back around this corner, and you can just fill those feathers right in that corner, and then just tuck that last one in right there. And then I'm going to come right back up, down the stem, just a parallel line there, leave it open so I can meet up with it again as I roll the quilt. A little curl here to match the other side, down and around like this. Now the inside corner is a little tricky. You have to really follow that around and tuck those feathers in like that, and then just tuck it in and follow the same line that you're on. And so you just continue to do that as you're rolling the quilt. And it's just so fun. It is so fun, and you get all of this done and it looks terrific. We'll take a look at this so you can see the texture on it. Next time on Linda's Longarm Quilting, we're quilting Lone Star quilts. Barbara Van Nuys shows us a beautiful technique, and I'll tell you about one of the best places to find a professional quilter, in a quilt shop. Remember, if I can do it, you can do it. See you next time.
For more information, visit us on the web at www.lindaslongarmquilting.com. Linda's Longarm Quilting is made possible by Gamel Quilting Machine Company, bringing quality, innovation, and service to quilters around the world for over a quarter of a century. By YLI, making decorative threads that help you unleash your imagination. By Statler Stitcher, providing automation to enhance and expand your long arm quilting business. And by Hobbs Bonded Fibers,